Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics, a third one already today. Stop producing content, Pierce. I don't have time to watch it. Sorry, not sorry. Just have to get out what I need to get out. I set my lists of things to talk about and sometimes those things take too long, as we have seen today. Anyway, time to discuss some geopolitical stuff. And this is interesting, I think, because I didn't quite understand what was going on here until I listened to Ukraine, the latest podcast yesterday, and they discussed this and it all made sense. I have reported previously how Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen warlord, who is a Putin supporter, I think because he knows what side his bread is buttered and that's the best way of maintaining power, he has been appointing his children to very or somewhat important positions, but at least two positions of power. And this, to me, just looked like complete narcissistic nepotism. But actually, it's not. It is far, I guess, cleverer than that. So here, Ramzan Kadyrov's eldest son, Akhmat, 18, has been appointed Chechenya's first deputy minister for physical training and sports. Okay, I don't think that's his favourite son, but he gets that position. His daughter, if you remember recently, I said Aishat Kadyrova, who's 24, was given the position of vice prime minister of Chechnya. So that's quite an important position. Previously, she used to be minister of culture, so already in government as a minister. That probably wasn't a high enough status for Kadyrova. So it was time for a better position. But again, I don't think that's what's going on, as in this kind of like, I want you to have as high and as decent position as possible. But there's a reason for this. And thirdly, and this is one that's just happened, as far as I know, this is Adam Kadyrov's fourth medal. So he's a 15-year-old who beat up a detainee who was in prison for supposedly setting fire to a Quran. That actually happened. But anyway, he was given a medal for that. He was given Hero of Chechnya this year. The reason why we have a laugh on the threads, if you're wondering why I sometimes call myself Legend of the Multiverse, it's because I was just answering Ramzan Kadyrov, who gave himself the award of Legend of the of Chechnya last year, and this year he's giving it to his 15-year-old son for beating up a detainee. And I said, well, you know, if he can just announce him a medal and give it to himself, then I can do that. So I'm Legend of the Universe. I've now upgraded that to Legend of the Multiverse because, let's face it, it's a lot better. Because I'm thinking JR and Grimsoft, JR helps with mapping, Grimsoft completely does the Discord server. So they're going to get Legend of the Universe this year. Anyway, what's going on here? So why has Adam been given 4 medals and has been put in charge of his dad's security service at the age of 15? What is going on? Well, actually, the reason almost certainly is this is succession. He is ill, as we know. I've reported previously that he had died. There were claims that he had died. Actually, it turns out it appears he was just seriously ill. He came back bloated with a slur to his voice, very quietly speaking as well, just not the Ramzan Kadyrov we saw last year doing these adverts with a machine gun running across like the outback or whatever. This is a man who supposedly, well, he thought he was being poisoned by his doctor, so buried his doctor alive and did him out of life, unfortunately for him, and has supposedly died, but seems to have just been very ill. Now, I think that he is probably dying, or at least has had a really big shock, existential shock, where he is thinking, I need my family to be taking over my position, to have positions of power, so that, you know, I have a legacy and my children aren't just thrown by the wayside after this. This is his succession project that he is putting into place all of his children so that when and if he dies relatively soon, the Kadyrov name will continue. So, it's not just narcissism. Right, Tim White says, head of Ukraine's presidential office has arrived in Washington. Andriy Yermak has met with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The delegation is talking about deepening cooperation and Zelensky's peace formula. This is really important. I've got a lot of time for Antony Blinken. Hopefully something can come out of this. There's a deadlock at the moment in Congress, which is desperately problematic for Ukraine and has to be broken. Really important. But I hope something comes out of this meeting. Hungary has blocked the transfer of 500 million euros of EU military aid to Ukraine again. Country's foreign ministry said that it has not received guarantees from Ukraine that Hungarian firms would not be included in the list of international sponsors of the war. Earlier, Ukraine excluded the Hungarian OTP bank from the list, but Hungary demands legal guarantees that this decision is permanent. So there's this Hungarian bank that's been blacklisted because of its broadly support of Russia. Viktor Orban wanted that off the blacklist, and then they would allow that aid to go through, but he's not happy with where that's gone yet. There could be some more wrangling over that. Hungarian government plans to ask its citizens whether they support Ukraine's potential EU membership. So there's this idea that they are going to stop Ukraine. In fact, they pretty much formally declared that they're going to stop Ukraine's accession to the EU. Eventually, that's not going to happen at any time particularly soon, but they're hoping by 2030. Well, yet even the announcement itself appeared to nudge the citizens to respond negatively. This is a classic case of like leading questions, or like, you know, leading the horse to water here. The Hungarian government plans to ask its citizens whether they support Ukraine's potential EU membership. Yet the announcement itself appeared to nudge citizens to respond negatively. In a 40-second video message shared on a Facebook page, Mensa, who is the Foreign Ministry's State Secretary, presented the potential accession of Ukraine in a negative light, saying that it would mean that, quote, the war would be brought into our country and a significant part of the EU resources would also go to Ukraine. Anti-Ukraine and pro-Russian statements are common for the Hungarian leadership. The video message comes as the country's prime minister urges the EU not to start membership talks with Ukraine in spite of the recent recommendation from the European Commission. His government has been campaigning against Ukraine throughout the war, warning Kiev's entry into the EU could bring the war to the bloc. There was also, I don't know if it reports it here, but what they were saying... Yeah, it doesn't actually report it here. There's other stuff that was kind of leading rhetoric around this question that was like, you might as well just say, we're going to ask you a question, but if you don't answer this, then, I don't know, we're going to kick you out of the country, or we strongly suggest you answer this way. I mean, it was that over the kind of rhetoric involved in this. So interesting what the results would be, and hopefully it's done as fairly as possible. But, you know, this is kind of quasi-dictatorship. Hungary. Norwegian government allocates 1 billion kroner, that's 84 million euros, to Norwegian organisations that help Ukrainians. Among the organisations are the Norwegian Red Cross, the Refugee Council, Save the Children, NORCAP, Church Aid, People's Aid, and others. So again, this is the idea of like, we're going to help Ukraine in really positive ways. But it's not like we're going to take this money and we're going to give it outside of borders to outside agencies. We're going to give it to Norwegian agencies to do this aid. And this is how nations do it. It's that positive sum game again. But I have to talk about this because people just think everyone's throwing money around for free. It's like, we're going to help you, but it's our Norwegian agencies that are going to help you. We're going to pay them. It gives them jobs, and then they spend their money, you know, and then that generates money. It's tax and US Ambassador 100th ship passes through the Black Sea humanitarian corridor. 100th ship has departed through the Black Sea humanitarian corridor since its opening in August 2023. The US Ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Blinker, said yesterday. Now, this is super important because you've had that whole shutting off of the humanitarian corridor. Well, now we are seeing that the grain corridor is hugging the coastline of European nations like Romania and Bulgaria as it comes down to the Bosphorus Straits and out and into the Mediterranean. It's not as efficient. It's probably slower. I don't know whether it affects the size of the ships at all. I'm hopefully going to be interviewing Exit, who is often co-hosting with Andrew Perpetua. She's kind of a maritime expert. and that's been on the cards for like 2 months, but we just haven't got round to it, unfortunately, yet. But I'm hoping to interview her in the next week or so, and we'll have a chat about stuff like this. But that's really good news that 100 have got through since they have been trying out this new route, and that has has a real meaningful, tangible effect on Ukraine's economy, because they are the breadbasket of the world, or one of the, and an awful lot of money is tied up in their grain exports, and to stop those grain exports is to stop them being able to finance their own country, really, let alone the war effort. The US is talking about ships. The US is checking. So US is thinking that at least 100 ships are evading sanctions. So they're going to investigate 100 oil tankers for possible Russian oil sanctions violations, according to Reuters. Ship management companies from 30 countries have been notified. This is brilliant. They need to just get really tough on this. They need to just close down these loopholes. More power to the US in shutting down these sanction loopholes, and every other nation as well. Publication notes that it's the largest investigation by the US since Washington and its allies imposed a price limit on Russian oil. So this will be to do with the price cap as well. Are there ships that are going to be selling oil at higher than the $60 per barrel price cap? Are they getting around that? Are there ghost ships that are transferring oil illegally out at sea? I'm sure that's going to be part of what they're looking into, so on and so forth. Right. Turkey, speaking of which, is importing record amounts of Russian Urals oil. Turkey is on track to import a record amount of oil this month, according to energy traders. Turkey talks out both sides of its mouth with regard to being rhetorically fairly pro-Ukrainian more recently than not, supporting Ukraine militarily. It's Baykar, the big defense manufacturer that is run by Erdogan's son-in-law, is a huge supporter of Ukraine. He's given $150 million worth of kit to Ukraine, which is more than many nations in the world have. So a single company has been more generous to Ukraine, which is incredible. But of course, it's a return on investment they're looking at getting by shoving their stuff in Ukraine. People seeing it and going, yeah, we'll have that, as happened with the Bayraktar TB2 drones. Okay, so Turkey do a lot of support for Ukraine, but they also allow a lot of Russian money to come through Turkey in terms of Russian people investing in Turkey, because if you invest a certain amount in property in Turkey, you get a right to Turkish citizenship, I think. So it's a way of getting out of Russia. So they're laundering, they have long laundered, I think, a lot of Russian money in the same way London has, but Turkey's good at doing that, taking the money, taking in the tourists, a lot of Russian tourists in Turkey. I can I can confirm that from first-hand knowledge, and they don't sanction Russian trade either, as far as I can work out. So they're just happily going, yeah, we stand with Ukraine, but we're going to take their money. And being a NATO member and a nation that has at least previously been up for accession to the EU, this puts them in rather an uncomfortable position, or at least puts NATO countries and EU in an uncomfortable position with regard to what Turkey are doing. So, yeah, there's some issues with that, and I don't know whether, as when the US are going around the world saying, right, we're gonna close these loopholes and we're gonna hit these companies hard for flouting sanctions, and then Turkey's going, oh yeah, we'll have some more oil, thanks. Kind of, yeah, it would be annoying. So I wonder whether the US might go, yeah, those F-35s or whatever it is we're selling you, yeah, not so keen on that if you don't sort this out. So we'll see. Right, lastly, I'm going to talk about this, and I'll probably leave the rest of what I'm going to say to an extra, because I'll annoy half of my audience, no doubt. So what am I talking about? Well, it's just, again, some of this kind of Republican narrative that's coming out. And we've got Laura Ingraham, who, I'm sorry if you like her, I detest her. Sorry, not sorry. She is very publicly pro-Russian as opposed to pro-Ukrainian. Anyway, this is interviewing Josh Hawley, who's another person I really detest. who's an American politician, Republican politician, who is very overtly anti-Ukraine, and here using the Nord Stream revelations that I reported the other day. Got iffy provenance about the reporting of that, but it could well be true. But just take it with a pinch of salt. Anyway.
And now, even more evidence that our instincts were right. In a follow-up report, a senior Ukrainian military officer with deep ties to the country's intel services played a central role in the bombing. Roman Cherveninsky managed logistics and support for a 6-person team that rented a sailboat under false identities and used deep-sea diving equipment to place explosive charges on the gas pipelines. That in the Washington Post. Joining me now, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. Senator, now, if this is true, it looks like it is true, all the evidence pointing to this, then why
I love that. If this is true, and it looks like it's true, why does it look like it's true? Like, there's no justification of that. You shouldn't talk about anonymous sourcing, because what's interesting about that article, I know some people try to call me out on that. Why do you believe that? Why did you call that into question, but you haven't called this into question? And I talked about inductive reasoning. I've good reason to believe general staff figures. Like, it's just apples and bricks. You can't compare like my reliance on general staff figures to give me an indication of the losses on the front line, and a newspaper article that's citing anonymous sources in a completely different context. But anyway, you remember Seymour Hersh released that about the Nord Stream, referring to these anonymous sources, etc., 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 and that is in direct contradiction of what this Nord Stream article is saying. And at the time, you had these people like going, well, why don't you believe this? Well, this is true, this is true. And it's like, now that's been shown to be completely and utterly false if this is true. Like, those two accounts of the Nord Stream can't be true, yet both are relying on anonymous sources close to X, Y, and Z. So it's like, I think I'm justified in being at least guarded on this, and I wouldn't be so forthright unless I really wanted it to be true. But perhaps that's why I'm being guarded, because I don't want it to be true. So there's psychology involved, but to be so forthright in these claims supposedly as a journalist, it
looks like it is true. All the evidence pointing to this.
All the evidence pointing to this. Well, have you talked about all the evidence that disconfirms that? No. So okay, but anyway, it could well be true. I'm not actually denying it's true. It's just like, And
why should the American taxpayers send another dime to Ukraine?
Because that money goes to the American country predominantly. How many times do I have to tell you, Laura and Graham? Do your job. Do your bloody job. Because it gives an advantage. It gives a return on investment to the US, either directly in terms of tax dollars for your defense and military industrial complex, or it gives you standing in the world. It gives you influence in the world. It stops Russia gaining in the world in this zero-sum game of global hegemonies. It's like, did you ever call Reagan out for how many decades of Cold War stuff? Did you ever call out the billions of dollars spent on the Cold War? No. Well, shut up.
I guess Ukraine was okay with harming Europe as long as they hurt Russia too.
That's an interesting philosophical discussion. That's probably the most interesting thing she said.
Yeah, the truth is, Laura, is that we shouldn't be sending any more money to Ukraine. And what else is true is that the Biden
Why not? Don't just say that. Tell us why not.
administration needs to come clean to the American people about what they know. We're learning now from these news reports that our government had advance warning about the Nord Stream 2 bombing, that our government knew that it was likely the Ukrainians that did it. And the same newspaper has reported that those Ukrainian special forces that apparently carried out the bombing may have been trained by the CIA. So what is going on here? I think it's time that Joe Biden leveled with the American people.
I think it's time that you move to Russia, mate. Just sod off. Just people like this irritate me, as you can tell. I'm actually genuinely angry. And I think it's because I've read this today. Now, I'm not going to go through this today because I know it will just derail this as a news piece. But just to let you know, here's a website that details all the Republican, sorry if you're a Republican, I know, yeah, but details all the Republicans who are pro-Russia, anti-Ukraine. Some of these quotes are absolutely sickening. I got to be honest with you, says Senator J.D. Vance. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other. Candace Owens. Every American who wants to know what's actually going on in Russia and Ukraine, read this transcript of Putin's address. We are at fault. Literally reading Putin and saying, I believe Putin, and it turns out America's at fault. She also says President Zelensky is a very bad actor who is working with globalists against the interests of his own people. No, he's not. Steve Bannon. No Republicans should vote for any money for Ukraine. $0 for Ukraine. Every member of Conservative Inc. that backs this Ukraine war is a simp. I'm more concerned with the US-Mexico border than the Russia-Ukraine border. Not sorry. Okay, that's you could say fair enough. Ukraine is not our ally. Russia is not our enemy, says Paul Gosa. We need to address our crippling debt, inflation, and immigration problems. None of this is Putin's fault. I could talk to you about how that's a logical fallacy. It's just a non sequitur. Those two things aren't connected. You know what? You can deal with those things. Those are issues, and of course they're not Putin's fault. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't be persuaded that helping Ukraine is a good thing. Like, gee whiz, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. Ukraine is not our friend, and Russia is not our enemy. He says as well, so on and so forth. There's so many of these are just, and then I'm just going to read you Laura Ingram. We had a kind of a really pathetic display from the Ukrainian President Zelensky. Tell us what you think, Laura Ingram. Tell us where your sympathies lie. Obviously not with Zelensky, and just all of these quotes just make me sick. And I think because I read that earlier this morning, it put me in a really angry mood. So I do apologise about that. But it just not a fan of this kind of rhetoric. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Toolpit. Speak to you soon.